Thank you, Mary Sue. Thank you to all of you who are here and to the rock star panel that I get to be a part of. Gotta love following Nobel's, WGN, Face, and then Mary gets to close it in, who has done stuff around the world and has led the region. So I'm delighted to be here to put Chicago in the middle of this panel and to really talk about what's happening here, what we're all doing, and what we can all continue to do. So it's a great starting point when you think about where we are. So Live Lab, Chicago, we're all right here. And the motto of this city is literally city in a garden. You go back 177 years ago, that's what people were thinking about when they founded this place. And we're quite grateful they picked the spot on the shores of Lake Michigan. It's lovely. But we've been building in that garden for a while now. And this chart got funky, actually, since we saw it last. This is a double version, which you don't need to see. What it's showing is an aerial shot of Chicago. And it's showing you the difference between emissions per acre and emissions per capita. If you look at it in emissions per acre, there are a lot of emissions coming out of Chicago. If you look at it at an emissions per capita basis, Chicago is very light. So this city that we have all built in this garden, from a carbon standpoint, is a very sustainable place to be. We have this wonderful anchor of a core public transit system and wonderful development around that with very efficient housing when you compare it to what's around here. So that's what we've built. So now we think about this question of carbon and how we can continue to be focused on the opportunities for us. The largest source of emissions coming out of Chicago is from buildings. 71% come from heating, cooling, and operating over 500,000 buildings. At the same time, though, we, all of us, government, individuals, businesses, we all spend $3 billion a year to heat, cool, and operate those same buildings. So when you think about the emissions that are coming out, the backdrop that we're all talking about here, buildings is a great place to start. So your home, for example, making your home more efficient, saving some dollars, making it more comfortable, that's a great place to start. So energy efficiency has been a big area of focus for us. We now have an overall effort called Retrofit Chicago that has 3 big areas of focus in it. Your home is one. So looking at ways to make your home more efficient. There's literally a single phone number now that didn't exist before. It's 8559-IMPACT. You can call that and get access to all the energy efficiency programs. Big buildings in the city are increasingly working to make themselves more efficient. We now have 37 million square feet from 48 buildings that have all committed to at least a 20% improvement in energy efficiency, reducing those emissions. The buildings that have already started this have already saved over $2.5 million. So it's a great cycle of reducing your expenses, making your buildings more comfortable, and reducing the emissions that we're all talking about here today. So we are thinking directly about using less. And then you start to transition into using green. So one of the things we did here in Chicago is we have now made it easier and cheaper to install solar around the city. For a standard pitched roof in Chicago, so for people at home, we now have a one-day permit for you, and we actually reduce the permit fees. So Solar Chicago is an effort this summer that's building off of Chicago Solar Express, 2 different efforts to make it easier to put solar up and around the city. It also gives you a great backup power source as you think about your opportunities. So that transition from using less into using green. And a big piece of that is moving away from coal. So about 3 years ago when the mayor came in and our team came in, there were actually 2 coal-fired power plants that were still working in our neighborhoods here in Chicago. And we're very pleased that those have closed. A tremendous amount of community engagement was involved here. A lot of folks were engaged. Natural gas prices helped as well. They were the largest stationary sources of emissions in the city. This is also a huge health win when you think about our neighborhoods and you think about air quality locally. So we're finding solution after solution to reduce the emissions coming out of our city that are giving us real benefits today. We now buy the city's power coal-free. And so when you're going around the city, you need to move through transportation. Transportation is the second big source of emissions. It's 23%. This picture you see here is of not all, but many of our 3,000 new Divvy bikes. Divvy is the first new transportation system in Chicago in 50 years. There are 3,000 bikes parked at 300 solar-powered stations. That is a healthier way to get around. It's a huge reduction in emissions when you're riding your bike. It's actually cheaper than most other forms of transportation around the city. This complements core work on our CTA system. So rebuilding, for example, the south side of the Red Line. giving more people in Chicago a faster, cheaper, sustainable option to move between their neighborhoods and their jobs. So really thinking about that anchor and thinking about those transportation options is key for us. Now, Chicago is a big transportation city, and we've been one for a long time. So I wanted to share this picture. This is a rendering of the Bloomingdale Trail or the 606. What it is right now is an abandoned rail line. What it will be next year is a park. Almost 3 miles of an elevated park going through multiple neighborhoods, which will have biking, it'll have walking. It will connect people in new ways in a lower carbon environment, bringing more and more people more and more reasons to live and stay in the city of Chicago. Wonderful ways to live a lighter carbon experience and have more of that connectivity that we're looking for. And so as we think about all of that movement all around, all of these opportunities are great ways to reduce our carbon impact. But we know from Don and from the scientists and from Tom what is happening in the climate and what the weather projections will look like for us. And we know for us in Chicago that the projections suggest more of those really hot days. They also project more of those really intense storms. So the picture you see here is actually City Hall's green roof. And that, in a sense, bridges between that mitigation question, so how can we reduce our emissions, through to the how can we prepare for changes that might come. So this provides a wonderful cool roof for us, so we have to spend less money air conditioning City Hall, always nice. But it also can capture stormwater in some of those rain events. So as we think about that, it starts to help on that side. And it reduces the heat in general coming off of that roof as we're looking at the downtown environment. So we have more and more opportunities to look at preparing and helping our residents. We know challenges are going to be around heat. So we have very clear requirements on light-colored roofs. We know that we can make it easier for people to have a cool environment if they're in a building like that. We also know that not everyone has access to air conditioning. So we have cooling centers that we open on days when it is very hot. And we have lists of people that we know are vulnerable residents that we do outreach to ensure that they've got access and opportunity there. At the same time, we know there's more and more rain coming. So we've now had 4 10-year storms in the last 6 years. So the math doesn't quite work. So we know that we're seeing weather patterns that are different. And so we're looking at more and more ways to capture stormwater in a place like a green roof or in green infrastructure. And increasingly make sure that that gray infrastructure, the pipes, can handle what is coming as well. So as we think about our city, I'll give you an interesting example. One of the places we're putting in green infrastructure to capture stormwater and keep it out of our system is at 4 of our Chicago public schools. So they have campuses now that are hard surfaces, very impervious. There's a partnership with the city, with the schools, with MWRD, with nonprofits to transform those campuses into greener spaces, capture the stormwater, but also create a wonderful place for kids to play, a wonderful neighborhood amenity, and an educational opportunity for all of us about the practical benefits today of both reducing our emissions and preparing for the changes that might come. So as we think about the city of Chicago, we want to be the most livable, competitive, and sustainable city. We want to be that today, but we also want to be that in decades to come, and embedding solutions of climate change is a key part of that. So thank you.